Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin and Karina, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and this week we are joined by Coach Karina.
Hey guys.
Or with Karina? With?
Yeah.
Karina's here.
Yeah.
Hey.
What's up?
There's my intro. What's up? So I'm really excited. Last podcast we talked about this idea, and I had a question that was submitted, and I wanted to kick off our series on this, and we don't have a name yet. We're thinking Coaching Anonymous, but that's not really that great. So if you guys have any ideas
that are more catchy,
please let us know, because creativity is not our strong suit. We just kind of skate by with that. Not really fun. But basically we have an anonymous form that you guys can send in questions, and the whole reason behind this is obviously we try and make our podcast as practical as possible so that people can take things, and we intertwine client stories or our own stories, but they're generally very broad topics, and we wanted to do stuff where people could feel comfortable asking a more specific question, whether it was a mental health question or a training question or mindset, whatever it might be, kind of a question that we could appropriately answer on a podcast, and we could answer in through a coach's perspective or through a therapist's perspective. So I'm really excited about this one. So we do have the form in the podcast show notes. If you want to submit a question, it is completely anonymous, hence that's why it's in the name of our not yet catchy title. But we're going to read the first one, and this isn't super specific, but it's a little bit more specific than just
the goal is to make this very situational.
Exactly.
So
specific, situational.
Yep.
Situational anonymous. No. Okay.
We'll keep trying.
And let us know. Please just send us a message or an email. So this is a question. I'm seeing a trend of fitness influencers who stop training intensely / tracking, and they're happier than ever and more balanced, and love their new, usually slimmer, effortless physiques. As somebody who loves weight training, I have no interest in scaling it down, but I'm always interested to hear about the magical unicorn zone, where somebody is both committed to their health and physique, but not obsessive, especially with their diet. How does one essentially eat reasonably, keep training, and trust the seemingly eternal process without getting down on their body image? The podcast has offered amazing psychological insights. I love the episodes with Rick. But what about practical ways to practice good health but not walk around hyper conscious of your status as a flesh bag all day? So I did really like that question, and again, it was very situational, and it's something that both of us have kind of gotten to a place where we're in this more effortless unicorn zone feeling with what we're doing, and that's why I wanted us to answer it. So first thing, you said this perfectly before when we were talking about it. You're like, honestly, it does kind of feel more effortless.
Right. And there was a point where I was in that person's shoes where I thought there's no way I'd be able to walk around at this weight without not constantly tracking every single macro or having to do my 20 plus minutes of cardio every single day. And it did very much seem like a unicorn zone, like impossible to achieve back then. But as we'll get into, a lot of things have changed in order for both of us to be able to attain this kind of body composition lifestyle without feeling like we are working so hard to do it. I'm not going to say like it's not effortless. There are habits that we have worked very hard on to make feel effortless. So they're more so like we worked very hard and now they are second nature. So, and you go ahead and want to kind of lead us into what those things are?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the things that we've really changed the most. And the first thing is that our goals have changed. And for the person who's asking this question and they're observing these other people, and I can think of a handful of people that I know, their goals have changed. Our goals have changed. When somebody is generally posting, like, again, going back to the specific question, which was fitness influencers, who, this person is saying, they are less obsessive, particularly with their diet. They maybe aren't as muscular as they were before, or maybe not as maybe this person isn't competing anymore, maybe they just are a little bit more, they use this word, usually slimmer. That may or may not be the case, but in general, they're kind of scaling back stuff, right? And a lot of that is going to come with a different goal. If your goal is to be the best physique competitor that you can be, which a lot of these people, again, that I'm thinking of, or you were thinking of, they used to be heavily into the competition scene. Well, you're going to have very different goals, and you're going to have very different ways to implement like what you're doing in an off season and in a dieting period. And what some people don't understand, especially if you haven't competed, there are going to be periods of time where you are generally a little bit bigger maybe than you would like, or I always try to tell people, like, if you're competing, you are going to be pushing past a maintenance zone. You're going to be in a calorie surplus, you're going to be training really hard, and you're most likely going to be a little bit outside of that uncomfortable body fat, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people are. And we do that in order to make sure that we've done every single thing possible in order to make a marginal gain the next time that you get on stage and the next time that you diet. So that slightly out of your comfort zone on the way down, everybody seems to recognize, but on the other side of it, in that kind of off-season period, that's just as important. So when people are not competing anymore, or they don't have these goals where they're like gaining half a pound of muscle matters to them now, they're gonna kind of maintain at a different look. If I was going to get on stage, I would be eating more and training more, and I would probably gain more weight than where I'm at right now. And I would have to do that in order to put myself in the best position. So even me, who's not, I wouldn't consider much smaller, I'm obviously bigger than I used to be, but in just a different way. But like, even for me, if I was going to still get back on stage and do all those things, like, I would still look bigger now. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think it comes down to that goal. If you're talking about somebody who used to put all of their effort into physique-based sports, and now they're just kind of maintaining at like a different body comp, it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that too is when you do take your body on a somewhat regular basis, whether it's once a year, a few times a year, down to that extreme of being so lean, there is this quote unquote, because I don't think that this is the right way to define it, but super compensation period after you come out of that diet, where obviously your body is going to, air quotes again, rebound, and you're going to be obviously a lot bigger, a lot heavier, not to the point where, we feel is unhealthy, but once you spend so much time with the perspective of I have to be smaller, I have to be leaner, you actually at a normal body composition at that point seems like so much bigger. Seems like you can't maintain, quote unquote slim. But when your perspective is constantly on these individuals who are on stage, these individuals who are 6 to 10% body fat, me being like, I think I'm like healthy, normal body weight now. At one point in my life, I would have seen myself, I would have thought this as like, oh my God, I'm so big. When in reality, like, my perspective is much different now, with my goal being shifted to performance and not so much based on aesthetics. I know that the body composition I'm in right now is normal and it's healthy for my current goal. And another thing that we mentioned was and it kind of goes in line with this super compensation theory. When I was constantly dieting, say personally, I also struggled, and this is something I've talked about a lot on the podcast and personally, with binge eating. And so when you're constantly going between these extremes of I have to be on track 24/7 when you really can't, and then on the other end I'll have these episodes of binge eating, it's gonna feel like it's impossible for me to maintain somewhere in the middle when I'm either super low or super high. For me personally, it's not for everyone. I had to stop tracking, I had to take a few steps back, and then I was able to maintain kind of a happy medium, somewhat effortless. I wouldn't really call it effortless. Again, I would more so call it habits that were practiced so often that they now feel second nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to wrap up the goal portion, if the people, there's some people who have just shifted their goals, which is going to shift their body comp, it's going to shift how they train, it's going to shift how they do really everything in their life. So again, if somebody had a much more extreme goal before, like the person was saying, really, really tracking a lot, training a lot, really being conscious of what they look like all the time. If they're now changing that or changing the direction that they're going in, you don't need to train as much. and maybe they don't want to, maybe they can't, like whatever it is, you know. So just looking at people's goals is really important when we're talking about like what these people have changed.
One thing on top of that, I feel like a lot of individuals too, a lot of people that we work with feel like they need to train like at least 6 times a week to maintain.
No.
Just try it. Just give 4 days a week a try.
Dude, 4 days is,
you'll be
talk
okay.
about unicorn zone. I think 4 days is like the unicorn zone in my opinion.
Or like have to do cardio every single day. Like just try it and see what happens. Like, so half the time I think it's that fear of if I don't do as much as I possibly can, there's no way I'm gonna not only like maintain leanness, but even get to that point. Because a lot of people are not at the point where they are, and they're still crushing themselves, and they never get to that point. Maybe what you need is actually to dial it back, to be more effortless, and that might help in terms of like managing overall stress, which will be really good for your physiology in the long run.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people seem to thrive when they make those changes. And you already brought up one of the points, and I just want to touch a little bit more on that, is, you know, oftentimes when you have a more flexible approach with your mindset around food, that means your diet could look, everybody's diet within a flexible approach can look different, right? We're not just talking about tracking macros rigidly. So when you actually have a flexible approach to your diet, typically you're going to have less binging behaviors, less overeating behaviors, and just less compensatory behaviors in general. So one of the worst things that we see as coaches, and this is where people constantly spin their wheels, is they see somebody, you know, they either go out to eat, or they maybe aren't really used to having flexibility in their life and their diet, and then they go out to eat, they order too much food, and they feel really stuffed, and then they come home and they're like, well, I'm already eating a lot, and I gotta start tomorrow my normal plan, so let me just continue to eat. And then you wake up and you're like, God, I really need to go do some cardio to like work this off. And you go between these compensatory behaviors of overdoing it in every single way, right? And then trying to like undershoot. And it ends up looking like this weekly just like yo-yo. And most people are not just doing this. Like if you do this every once in a while, that's okay. Like sometimes, you know, you're gonna eat a little bit too much. And sometimes you wanna go do cardio the next morning. That's okay. But waking up and having that thought of like, I'm a piece of shit. I ate way too much last night. I feel so gross. Let me go sweat this out. I gotta go do 2 hours of cardio. That is a real thing. And what ends up happening is it snowballs. And then people do this for years, right? And that's where we see these issues of the inconsistencies really, really lead to your body just honestly, I don't think it just feels comfortable.
I've seen people maintain much more healthy, ideal body compositions in which they feel comfortable at being consistent at higher intakes than being on super low calories, say 4 days a week, and then like messing up 3 days a week and this constant yo-yo. I really personally think that our physiology loves consistency.
It does, 100%.
And so, I mean, and then that's kind of where that effortless feeling might come in too. It's like, all right, let me not try to be as compensatory. Let me take my foot off the gas a little bit because this is going to be much more sustainable for me. And then I'm not bouncing between overdoing it, undershooting, overdoing it again, feeling like crap. Digestion is, all messed up. And I've been there. And I was one of those people where I did that on a weekly basis, underdoing it, overdoing it, waking up early the next morning to work off those extra calories, starving myself, overdoing it in the evening again. Like, I've been there. I know what it feels like. And so it feels so good to like be here now.
Like chaotic did it feel? You know what I mean? Like it always felt like there was something else that had, and
much more constantly sympathetic too in terms of like stress, and your physiology responds to that. And I mean,
and it's interesting because you could literally be doing the exact same thing, but if you were thinking of it in a different way, your body would respond differently. And if that sounds too woo-woo, I don't care. I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with clients. I've seen it with
on this.
Yeah, like it's not like it sounds a little out there, but it really, if you were to say every morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do cardio because I enjoy it and it makes me, feel healthier, it makes me feel better. I like how it starts my day. I enjoy it. I'm choosing something that I like to do. And you wake up and you do that versus waking up and going, "Oh my gosh, I hate myself. I ate too much last night. I have to work this off. I have to do it for these reasons that are not these, for, let's say, not great reasons," right? your body does handle that differently. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's like these are things that are ingrained, and it's not just that one behavior. It's going to be everything else that kind of affects your day.
Yeah, and if you don't subscribe to like how powerful like perspective and the brain is, just look up the research on like placebo surgeries.
Oh my god, and sham surgeries are the most interesting research.
And just if you don't believe me, like go read those studies. Like, and after seeing those, it's like, oh my gosh, like just the way we think about things can really change how our body responds to situational, dietary changes, outside stressors, training, and all of those
The
things.
worst cases of digestive issues that I've seen with clients generally always go hand in hand with some kind of really bad either trauma or just really, really negative mindset, really negative stress perception.
Oh my
And
gosh.
certainly there are other things, there's low-hanging fruit that we can do to adjust the diet, adjust their lifestyle, adjust their habits. But if you don't address that, it doesn't matter what food protocol you go on, what supplements you buy, none of that matters until you get everything else mentally in the right place.
I literally just had a client tell me yesterday that she had a very stressful day, and so that after every single meal, because of all this stress, her stomach was in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you're literally like saying it yourself. Like, just stress is really throwing off everything else. And obviously, you've talked about this multiple times. There's nothing we can do about life stressors. As long as you're alive, there's something bad is going to happen to you. If you didn't know that now, like, newsflash. But you have to be able to respond, and you have to be resilient, and and that just comes with practice, like throughout your life. And that's something we work on with clients too, is like stress resilience, stress perception, because that goes a long way when it comes to your physiology.
It really makes all the difference, and that was one of our points, was mindset, our mindset and psychology for us personally. And I can probably assume that a lot of these people that this chick was referring to are in that same spot. Like, we think very differently about the way that we, everything all goes together. Like, my mindset and your mindset is very different around how we view our bodies and what we do. And like you said, it's much less of a sympathetic kind of response. It's a much more understanding response. I want people to understand, though, that this does not mean that you don't have negative days, right? Obviously, the whole idea of this like unicorn zone is that things are effortless and like things are pretty easy, and like you don't really have any kind of dysmorphia issue. Like, you're trying to, I just love where I'm at. That is great, and I would say that a lot of the time we feel like that. But that doesn't mean that you never have negative thoughts, or that if you have a negative thought, it's actually a bad thing.
I had one yesterday. I was like, whoa, dude, like, do we need to go on a diet? Like, too many donuts? Like, scale it back. And so, yeah, I think I put on a pair of pants, and I was like, oh, like, these aren't looking, but I don't know. Sometimes, like, we just have those days where our perspective is just not where it should be.
Even within the day, right? Like, there's sometimes where you wake up and you're like, damn.
Oh.
Okay. And then later you're like,
you see a
fuck.
picture and you're like, oh my god.
Bro,
bad
what
angle.
am I doing?
Bad angle, or do I always look like that?
Who didn't fucking tell me? I've been dealing with this because I've literally, for months now, I mean, my training has been awful. And not like my training was my number one priority. I've had a lot of other things that have been going on, and so it's okay. But there's, like, it's been a substantial decrease in what I've been able to do training-wise. And, at some point it does catch up, right? Like, as much as I'm scaled back from what I used to do, like, you still have to do a certain amount of work in order to kind of maintain. So I've gotten to a point where I've kind of gone, let's say, backwards, right? Or like, I have a little bit less muscle, maybe have a little bit more body fat, and I'm in a place where I finally was able to train the other day, and I was like, God, this is so embarrassing. Like, the workout was okay, but like, I was pushing like no weight. I had no fucking work capacity. I was super sore. I'm still sore, like 3 days later. But I have all these negative thoughts immediately. Like, I took a video, oh my gosh, this looks terrible. How do I feel like this? Why am I like, all these thoughts? But then instead of letting that spiral, I was then able to have those thoughts, detach from them, and then move forward.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have a negative. I think people want to not ever feel that negative thought, and that's not the right answer.
And I think also negative thoughts are very situational. A trend that I've like strangely picked up is when my clients have the worst body image days when they're like on their period, because they don't feel great. If you don't feel great,
for sure,
you're not gonna look at yourself and say like, I look great, you know? Like
No.
and I've had those weeks too. And so maybe for you, something that was so, you know, regularly a part of your life that feels very disoriented and like just is not your norm. Now everything else kind of feels a little bit different, and the way you look at yourself is very different, because I look at you and I'm like, you look the same, like you look fine. And so, but obviously, like I know how you are because I've known you for so long now. And and so I think that those feelings are very well influenced by like the changes that go around us in our life as well.
Whenever we feel like we can't do something right, like I haven't been able to train because I was having some injury issues. I literally couldn't do much, and then I got sick. So like it's very frustrating when you feel like you can't do so. It's not because I'm like choosing not. Again, if I were to choose not to do it,
it's very much not in your control.
Yeah. So those things can always be a little bit more frustrating, and so many of those things happen to us on a daily basis. This is just one small stupid example that I'm using, but like these are like things that we can control. If I would have said to myself, okay, for the next 3 months I'm not really going to train that much because I'm putting effort into this, then it would be, then it's easier for us to mentally wrap our heads around that. But then you also have to still detach and go, okay, well, I didn't really have control over this, but me being upset about this and me spiraling, because that's what ends up happening is people start spiraling, and then that will lead again to these compensatory behaviors, whatever they might look like, whether that's a dietary restriction, whether that's a cardio output, whether that's overeating, whatever that might be, people end up going to that. And it's like, no, that's what we're trying to avoid. So you can feel negative thought, you can have negative thought, but you learn to stop those a lot sooner. And then when these people seem to be effortlessly maintaining their diet and their training, their physique and it just seems like, oh my God, this seems so easy for them. Well, it's because they are not letting those small things turn into bigger things.
One more thing that I want to say about this that I feel like is often missed is genetics, and I hate to say this, but I think, sorry, my phone.
So fucking rude.
I'm so sorry. Disrespectful to you guys. But,
probably like nobody heard it until you.
I know, my phone just went off. Also a big thing is like genetically, right? So these individuals who might not have to train as hard, might not have to track their food, or can eat whatever and maintain a body composition that might be more ideal to us, possibly also started out, like before they even got into lifting, naturally very low body fat too. And so I think that's something to also keep in mind. I am not that person. I've always kind of been, like, I can show you pictures of myself when I was 13, definitely on the like chubbier side. Like that's kind of, I think, my natural, more comfortable body fat at that point. So I think that's something super important to keep into account too. Not to say that, because of your genetics, like you can't do anything. No, but that's something to be realistic about. It's going to be easier for other people than it is for others. And
we're always really realistic. I think that that's something that, everybody who listens to this kind of knows, or our clients certainly know. And, I have no problem telling somebody that. Like, listen, I am, I see how hard you're working. I see how consistent you are. I see what you are doing day in and day out, and you've been doing that for years. And yeah, does it suck to watch somebody who's just getting into this for the first few months and they
get their pro card their first show?
Get their pro card their first show. They have abs year round. They're building muscle so quickly and you haven't gained a pound in a year. Yeah, that happens. And you know what? It does suck. And for their 2 cents that they put in for work, you got to put in $2. And that's really unfortunate. But what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you're smarter than that person. I don't know. Maybe you have better, maybe you're better at school. Maybe you are better in your career. Not that we're pinning this as a better or worse thing, but you can maybe pick things up quicker than other people. Everybody has pros and cons about it. Everything, there are good things and bad things about all of us.
But what we won't do as coaches is be like, your situation is very woe is me because this person. No. This is what you're working with. And what matters is how you progress from here.
Exactly.
And that's it.
And some people things are going to come really, really easy to them, and other people are going to have to work really, really hard at things, and then vice versa. It's just the reality of life, no matter how we dissect this, whether it's your physique, whether it's your metabolism, whether it's your, relationships, whether it's school, whether it's your job. Literally, some people just have an easier time with certain things, and other people have a harder time with certain things, and that is okay. And it's not a judgment thing. It's just a, hey, how do I be realistic? How do I, again, detach from this? And, sure, maybe some people can effortlessly live in this unicorn zone with seemingly little effort. And maybe it really is really little effort, It's not, it isn't just like something that they're portraying on Instagram. It's like that literally is how they live their life.
But it also could be the fact that we've spent a lot of time practicing these habits now that they are effortless and they are second nature. And
that was the last point of, what have we changed the most? And it is the daily habits, right? And one thing that I think people often forget about this conversation, or just in general, like, when you have more flexibility with stuff, whether it's training or your diet or whatever, we've built up so many habits over the years that what seems like it would be taking a lot of willpower or a lot of effort doesn't, right? It doesn't take a lot of effort for me to eat pretty reasonably within my goals without tracking my macros every day. I've done that for many, many years. I've been weighing food, I've been measuring food for a long ass time. And I've actually taken the skills that I've learned from flexible dieting and tracking macros and measuring food and all that to apply to my life now without having to do that. I could easily go back and do that if I wanted to be a little bit more on point, for sure. But I also know, okay, I'm taking those same habits now and just applying them in a different way. I'm still eating protein 4 times a day. I'm still trying to get fruits and vegetables. I'm still drinking water. But I don't need to track that anymore. But some people, when they're first starting, they have to. And they might have to track that for 10 years before they finally get it, right?
And it doesn't always have to be this black and white thing forever. Like, you can, even now, I eat intuitively. But sometimes I'll be like, how out of touch with reality am I? So I'll take a day where I'll just start plugging things in. And I'm like, okay.
Perfect.
I'm still getting enough protein. And I'll do that maybe once a month. Maybe.
It's good to check in. The same thing with the scale, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to weigh myself. I'm not getting, I did when I was doing that competition, I had to make sure I was in weight.
Right.
But outside of that, it doesn't really matter, right? And ultimately, it really wouldn't have mattered where I was anyway for that. But I was. But even now, I still just weigh myself. Sometimes I go a month without weighing myself. Sometimes I do it every week. It's just a good way to kind of check in and say, okay, well, where am I at? And if I'm fluctuating too high or too low, that could mean something, right? Because I kind of know where I feel good, just, again, maintaining in this spot where I'm just kind of settled. So it's just good to check in. Where am I at? And does it matter?
Yeah.
No. But is it a good tool to use? Sure. So I think that it's important to, when you look at these people and they have these daily habits that are healthy, like for us, just because we're not necessarily as rigid as we used to be, while we could maybe be a little bit tighter and more rigid, and that would result in other things, like different goals, we can also have these habits and be pretty close. Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it. It's like, I'm pretty close to what I want to, how I want to look, feel, perform, etc. And if I want to change something, I know that I have to dial certain things in.
Yeah. Okay, so my question for you then is, because I know we wanted to make this to kind of like a column-y type of format. What advice would you give?
Situational anonymous. Situations anonymous.
So what practical advice? Let her laugh for 10 minutes. Okay, so what practical advice would you give this person that they could now walk away with? So kind of reminding you guys, this person loves to train, but wants to find this place where they are not overly obsessive about food and body image. What advice would you give them moving forward based on that message?
I would say, you really have to figure out what is the most important goal right now, right? And you really have to be realistic with that. And that is very interpersonal. That's something that only you as the individual can decide. Is this the most important thing to you, or are you trying to, because if it is, continue to do all these things, and that's totally fine, right? If you're trying to back off because you're like, man, I'd really like to put my effort towards, a work goal right now, so I want to kind of maintain everything else because I don't want to be as focused on that. Well, then you really have to set those steps in motion and say, okay, well, now what can I do in order to have less emphasis on this? So first thing I would say is start, if you are trying to have a more relaxed version of you, like not obsessively tracking and stuff, start doing, which is what we do with clients, is we start adding in untracked meals. We start adding in untracked days. We start adding in, hey, here's some targets. This is what I do with certain people. Here's your target for the day, but estimate your dinner within these kind of ideas. And it doesn't have to be perfectly weighed out, perfectly whatever, but still kind of start estimating. So you're putting in more, you're forcing yourself to have more flexibility with your diet. And then eventually that will become second nature. And then again, reassess, are you training because you love, the person said so you don't have to train, you don't have to change your training if you enjoy doing this. If you feel like it's impeding your life, maybe tone it back. But if you are loving that, go for it. You know what I mean? Just because you've seen other people tone down their training, that could mean because they have all these other things going on. They're starting a business, they're starting a family, they're moving. Those would be reasons to maybe not train as much. But if you're in a spot where you can do that, focus on it. Yeah. And then if you want to have these other goals, I would say you have to be deliberate about them. It's not going to be an accident. And we talked about this a little bit on the Boundaries podcast, but there's a lot of things that unless you set them in place, it's not going to happen, right? And a lot of people want to have these better or different habits, and they're not going to happen by accident. If you want to start meditating and you want to start doing, being more mindful, you want to start reading a book, it's not just going to casually happen. You know what I mean? The same thing goes for nutrition and training stuff. If you want to just, start tracking your food, it's not going to be an accident. If you want to start training more, it's not going to happen. You have to set these things in place. So figure out what you want to do that is either taking your time away, maybe a different goal that you want to do, and just actually implement that goal. But the first thing with the food is for sure just adding in that flexibility, because a lot of people don't do that. And again, it's not going to be by accident. Do you just have a more sustainable, balanced approach with your food? It's going to take some effort.
Yeah, and this is not for this specific person, because I do believe that she truly just loves to train. Yeah. But something I often see with clients and individuals is, if you're using training as a way to offset calorie intake, you're not using training correctly. Also, if you actually took a look at how many calories you truly burned by just lifting weights, it's not that many. Hate to break it to you. So, that's another perspective shift that needs to happen in those kind of situations. If you're using training as just a way to allow yourself to eat more, then you need to kind of really check in and reassess why you're training, or what might be wrong with your nutrition, or is there some deeper work that needs to be done mentally or with your body image and things like that.
Yeah, so I was really happy that we got this question, and I'm really excited for this column moving forward.
Yeah, but help with a name, please.
Jesus Christ, sir, give us a fucking name, because I can't do this. Hopefully Jill can come up with one, because she's hella creative, but we are open to suggestions as well.
You're creative genes.
Yeah, just negative on that. You could, if you were hey, I just can't do creative stuff. No. I don't know. Besides makeup, I love makeup.
Yeah, you're very good at makeup.
Makeup's fun. I don't know if that's creative though.
I can do sports and work till I die, but I can't come up with new things. So
I'm not our stuff. But yeah, I would say that all of this, whatever unicorn zone, right, is for you, where you're seeing other people and you want to do that in your life. And I think that that's a really important thing, is to get to a place where you feel really comfortable and things are a little bit easier, right? Again, you have to just be realistic with what you want to do and what you want to put your energy into. And you have to be intentional really with that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be intentional about your food or about your training or about your career, about your family, all of these things, you have to just choose, and then you move forward. And then understanding that if you're choosing a different thing to be intentional about that's not related to training or your diet, those are going to have to take more of a maintenance backseat. Doesn't mean that you're not following any healthy habits. Doesn't mean that you're just completely falling off the deep end. That's not the point of this.
Yeah.
It just means that instead of being maybe 100%, maybe you're 85%, but then you can put that little bit of extra energy over into the other goal that is most important for you. And just accepting that if you're not 100% with these things, that there, you might, and you're only 85%, maybe you're not going to have the best whatever that you used to have before, and that's because you're not putting all the effort there.
But just have that expectation.
Yeah, have that expectation. If I'm not training as much as I used to, you're not going to be as muscular, right? Yeah. If you're not as on point with your diet, your physique is going to look you just have to be realistic with that. So I think a lot of people just aren't honest about that, and they just say like, I want to do all these things and I want to have all this. It's like, okay, that's cool. Maybe some people can do that,
Yeah.
you know, but chances are you're going to have to choose a few things to put your focus on, be really intentional with those, and then everything else is going to kind of maintain.
Definitely.
So if you guys have any other questions for this, like we said, it can be really anything. No holds barred. No bar.
No.
Don't hold back. I don't know what I was trying to say. Like usual, I can't come up with.
We're very spazzy today. Like,
dude.
Our brains are kind of all over the
I've been
place.
spazzy all week, but I think that's just at this point.
These nitro brews.
At this point, it's just me. It's fine. So if you guys have any questions, don't hold back. Whatever the fuck I was trying to say, some like phrase. No holds bar is no bars.
I think it's no holds barred.
Yeah, but
Someone's gonna be listening to this and like yelling.
What
to
does
us,
that
like,
mean?
This is what it is. I don't know.
Anyways, fucking just put your questions in the anonymous Google form.
We're trying to help you guys.
Don't hold back.
Aggressively.
Yeah, fucking do it. And we'll put that in the show notes so you guys can check it out. And if you have any other questions or you want to look at any of the articles that we've written, other podcasts we've done, or apply for coaching, you can go to teamlocofit.com, and we will catch you guys next time.
See ya.